Hey everyone, has HPE become just another Nvidia AI factory town? You're watching Textron Gang. Hey everyone, happy Thursday. It's Alan Schimmel for Textron Gang. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a lot to go over, including news and a report on the HPE conference happening out in Las Vegas, some of it at the Sphere. Um, Let me introduce you to our gang members today, as we've been doing lately. Not a big introduction, but we're joined by regulars, John Swartz, who's actually in Vegas, Teri Robinson, Mike Vizard out in Denver still at the open source conference, and yours truly here, though by the time you're watching this, I'll be in New York at PlatformCon. Mike, I guess we'll go to you and throw it to John. HPE's put on quite a show out there in Vegas. First I've heard of a conference host using the Sphere, which is, I think, a great idea. But beyond the optics of that, is this really being, are they marionettes on the strings of Nvidia? What's going on, Mike?
Sure. It sure seems that way because not only is HPE using the same terminology to describe, essentially building AI workloads on on-premise IT environments, but Teradata was out this week saying the same thing, and I've seen Dell use the same terminology, and anybody who kind of builds anything that looks like a server that goes into a local data center is suddenly singing the same tune that NVIDIA kind of seems to have scripted, which is this notion of an AI factory. But John, I'm in Denver. You're there. What's your take?
Yeah, so it's interesting. You guys are stealing my thunder. I was going to refer to NVIDIA as the puppeteer and all this, because coming even down to the keynote speech, I'm just looking at something that the CEO of HPE, Mr. Neary, said. He said, soon it will be IT's responsibility to manage a digital workforce. That's like straight out of the NVIDIA playbook. We all had our Jensen Wang comment as well. He wasn't in attendance. He was here last year, but he talked about the same.
Jensen Wang
was not here. No. What they should have done is they should have had an avatar of him that was generated by AI and have him appear on stage, because that was about the only thing missing from the presentation. And if I can just be really quick about the presentation at the Sphere, you're right, Alan. They used the Sphere almost upstaged the entire announcement, but it also, I think in a weird way, kind of a brilliant stroke, because they're showing what you can do with their technology as part of the presentation versus telling you, they're showing you. So in a sense, I mean, I'll give them credit for that. But essentially what they want to do and what they're talking about is making the enterprise, putting it back into the hands, the era of AI, into the hands of IT. They were kind of expanding on this previous agreement with NVIDIA, and they were talking about this AI factory solutions with composable solutions optimized for service providers, model builders, sovereign entities. They also talked about GreenLake intelligence. And basically, they hammered home this idea that through networking and they hope, soon to be completed acquisition of Juniper, through their hybrid cloud, and then through their AI strategy, they are going to be the solution for the enterprises. Neary made a good point that in a sense, the enterprise adoption of AI has been business-led initiative. It's not an IT-led initiative. So now they want to make the transition to the IT team and help them in administrative tasks. In a sense, it's pretty vanilla. It's kind of bland, but it plays into the NVIDIA playbook. And I mean, and again, it's a sense of deja vu. We get our prerequisite comments from Jensen. We get the hugging or the kissing of the ring of NVIDIA. But in a weird way, I think what HP was trying to articulate, and we talked to Daniel Newman, who's here, about it. It's in a sense, they differentiate themselves from their competitors in a sense with the way they presented this, with their software strength and the hybrid cloud. So it was overall an effective presentation. And you're going to have to start pulling out all the stops, because there's so many of these announcements that are basically treading or trotting over the same ground saying the same thing, the same phrasing. It's almost as if Nvidia has decided they are going to be part of the presentation of every conceivable enterprise announcement in this field, and their imprints everywhere.
Maybe, I look at this stuff and I scratch my head a little bit and I go, they're so busy on the hype and following the thing that they're kind of missing the point. And what seems to be happening is that I would say the first generation of AI platforms were built by data science teams that had their own internal IT infrastructure people attached to that. And they built a single application that ran on a single set of hardware and servers. It might have been in the cloud, but a lot of times it was in an on-premise environment. As this evolves, it's pretty clear that every application is going to have some AI capability, and we're going to need infrastructure that can run multiple AI applications, and it's going to have to be managed at a level of scale that is highly distributed. And that requires the traditional IT team to show up and kind of manage all that stuff, because the folks attached to the data science team are not going to be able to do this at scale. And that's why you see HPE and Dell and everybody else showing up saying, we need something that feels more like a little more turnkey, like traditional servers, versus all this custom infrastructure that we've been building out for the last couple of years. And in my mind, that's the big shift here. And everybody else seems to be kind of just, trying to say it's going to be an AI factory. Frankly, I don't really like that term, because who the hell wants to go to work in a factory? But
according to our government, we got a lot of work.
Oh God, yeah, I know.
I have a few other thoughts here. Look, if it's Nvidia who's pulling the strings at all of these shows, does that make Jensen El Padrino the Godfather? Right? You kind of like the Mario Puzo thing. But Mike, to your point, look, I think the first generation of AI stuff was very much experimentation. It was very much first generation, and it was sort of bespoke, custom kind of thing done for very specific tasks and solution sets. But now we're looking at AI, to do a Buzz and Woody meme. Look, Woody, AI as far as the eye can see, right? AI for everything. And in order to do that at scale, you are going to need mega factories like where Elon produces his batteries or wherever, right? You're going to need these. And quite frankly, we so much, at least our focus here at TechStrong on AI is how AI helps generate code and can make us more secure and can help us build platforms, and how we use AI in IT. Well, let's not forget that much of software development today is done in a software factory where we have different teams in the factory. We have developers, we have platform engineers, we have DevOps engineers, we have SREs and security folk, right? All working on the factory floor, so to speak. So now that factory is an AI factory. Same people, different name. Meet the old boss, same as the new boss.
Yeah. It's like it's the whatever. What did Benioff call it? I always hated that phrase, but it's the fourth industrial revolution, whatever the hell it was. But so, in a sense, HPE, and I talked to a couple of the executives here. They're just hammering home, trying to reach the CIO level, the IT level, as the service brokers, the folks who are going to put this into play. So, yeah, we can romanticize about the beginning and the innovation. Now we're kind of reaching the mass deployment where things become a little bit more watered down and not as exciting or sexy. They're trying to be more practical. So we're going to get hit in the head with this over and over again.
No, I think so. I think the bigger issue is, so you take your HPs and your IBMs and your Amazons and your Googles and your Microsofts and all of these other, the Oracles, the big tech players who can, churn out these factories for large enterprises. And how are they separating themselves, right? So Nvidia is a tide that's lifting all of these boats. But are they truly interchangeable, or will we see spheres of influence, spheres of specialization that separate HP from Dell, from IBM. Or if they're all the same and it's a commodity race down the toilet bowl, that doesn't bode well for these companies.
I don't know. It's too early to say, but I will also point out that will happen for sure is CIOs will be getting out their pencils and they'll be creating these AI project bills, and there'll be like a bill running through Congress. There'll be so many additional writers and things that they're adding to that have nothing to do with AI because they just want to make sure that they get approval for 100 other things. And
They're blamed for that either. That's the way of it. As much as things change, they stay the same. Anyway, John, is the show over now, or is today
No,
the
it's still going. There's going to be a second keynote. I talked to there's a lady who oversees. She came from Intel a couple of years ago. Trish Dem Kroger, who's going to be giving a keynote.
Who applied for asylum or something, or
yeah, I can't get out of here soon enough. But yeah, no, it's an interesting show. When I see these things, I'm trying to figure out what is it unique about these companies that they're going to announce, and for the most part, there really isn't much. So I'm always trying to find, and I think we're all kind of talking about this idea of how do you differentiate yourself and not become part of this morass of mediocrity, right? Where you're just stuck in the middle and
foot soldiers in the Nvidia crime family.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, yeah, I didn't think of it that way, but yeah. Let's stick with that. That's more interesting.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I think what they were trying to do is they were using the sphere. I mean, cynically, they're using the sphere as the star of the show. So they had two events here. They had the keynote, which was pretty effective, and then they had a concert later. So they're trying to spend as much time there as they are actually at the convention center.
The sphere is spectacular. Who
it is.
played with the concert?
Yeah. Oh, it's Kenny Chesney. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's playing there now.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing too is I wonder if, and the people at HPE were telling me that they actually, they admitted to me off the record, like we know we're considered a dull company, but we think the way we use this venue might influence the way other companies do it. I think they're onto something. I wouldn't be surprised.
I think other companies will too now.
ServiceNow will probably do it. Adobe definitely should do it here.
I can't wait to see what Nvidia does with it.
Nvidia would do a spectacular job, but y'all see.
All right. I would encourage as many venues as possible to use the sphere so that the Dolans will have enough money to buy a good center for the Knicks.
Oh gosh.
Well, let's hire a coach first. Like, I have no confidence. You know what? We're going to end this one. We'll take a break. We'll be right back here on the TechStrong Gang.
Hey folks, we're back on the B block and we're talking about, well, what's real and what's not real here with these AI coding tools for developers. I mean, clearly there are advances that are being made, but there's always this kind of hype cycle around this stuff. And you hear people talking about, well, we won't need developers won't need the code, they'll just review code and we'll get rid of most of the developers and we'll only have architects from here. And there's all kinds of noise in the system all over the place. So we have this article and it's a moment in time and it basically outlines what actually works and what may not work so well. And one of the things that works well is anything to do with project management, and it will definitely generate code, but a lot of that code may not know enough about the environment it's going to run in, so it lacks a lot of context. So human developers might have to go in there and tweak it and make it work for that environment. But then again, they didn't write it in the first place, so they didn't know how it works. So now they're feeling, well, maybe I should have just wrote this whole thing from the ground up myself. Alan, you hear all the same noises I hear. What's real in your mind here, and where are we on this journey?
You know, I would say we're still at the beginning of the beginning, not even at the end of the beginning when it comes to AI generated code. Eh, and what I find interesting, Mike, is the proficiency of AI generated code and the progression wave of how it's getting better, I think closely mimics the progression wave of AI generated text writing. Right? When AI first came out, it was very easy to spot something that was written by AI. It was cold. It was easy to spot. It's gotten much harder, though I think it's still, for instance, I think this article on DevOps was AI assisted, let's call it. I think it's the same thing with code. The latest version of Claude, what do they call it? Claude Code or something like this is supposed to be much, much better at generating usable code. For the foreseeable future, and when we're talking in text, foreseeable future, 6 months, right? 12 months at the most, I think AI generated code is still a question of having a co-pilot in the co-pilot chair next to you. I don't think, except for the most rudimentary kind of apps that you could probably do in no code today anyway, you would be relying on AI generated code for the majority, for the heavy lift, right? I just don't, I don't think it's there yet.
It seems like these things get better in leaps, right? Every 6 months or so, there seems to be a leap forward. And Teri, I want to get your opinion on something here because somebody was telling me this morning. He said, the leap that we saw at the beginning of this year, the tools actually recognize, SQL injection vulnerabilities, which has been the number one flaw since for a decade now. And they were saying, hey, we might get to a point soon where that's no longer going to be an issue because AI coding tools will actually not generate those types of vulnerabilities. However, they will generate other types of vulnerabilities.
Therein lies the problem because I think that's right. I've heard that as well. These tools are going to, really spot the security issues or some things, the SQL injection being one, but and that'll be good for security, right? But it's still can be used equally for bad, I think. And there are going to be some things that are missed, and this vulnerable code will be repeated. I mean, there are still all of those issues. I think what it's really super good for is putting it up for review. Putting your code up for review and seeing if there are any issues there. But I think, Alan, you're kind of right. It has to be there, as a co-pilot, right? Because there has to be this human oversight and this monitoring. Otherwise, I think it could be a disaster as far as security is concerned.
And security I always preach that security should be synonymous with quality. There are other quality issues beyond security with AI generated code. Is it the most resource efficient code, right? Is it run like a pig or is it really optimized? Now, one may say that a great use of AI is having the human write the code and maybe asking the AI to optimize it, right? And maybe that's switching seats. But, there's a lot we could do. But Mike, to your point and what I was saying off the top is, look, this is progressing. This is multiplying faster than triples on Star Trek. And, 9 months from now, who knows how good, a year from now, a year and a half from now, we will be eating our words. But as we look today, this is, I think, the state of the art.
There is an interesting generational divide starting to emerge where the younger developers are saying, well, this is great. It makes me more productive and I can create stuff. And I think that appeals to maybe the senior level business executives because they hear that that means that I can use developers with less experience. But the older developers are saying, conversely, this is great because I don't need any junior developers running around because I can use AI to do all this stuff and that they will be the primary beneficiaries thereof. And they will become more efficient and it will be just harder than ever for your junior developers to break into the field in the first place because junior developers don't know anything about how that app runs in, say, a retail environment or financial services or whatever it is. I don't know how much of this is kind of, just old guard versus new guard, but it's an interesting conversation that's being had out
Well,
there.
yeah, and then where does that, I mean, you have to think beyond that a little bit. Where does that put younger developers later on in terms of their trajectory, to develop? I mean, if all of this stuff, they're being replaced at sort of the lower levels even, then we're not really developing a cadre of developers that have the expertise and can move forward, you know?
Well, I call this the reverse Logan's Run. Speaking of generational gaps, Mike, I thought you would make reference to my Star Trek reference, but it's a reverse Logan's Run, right? If we kill everyone when they're 30, we don't have any people over 30. and yeah, and it's the same thing. If we don't have junior developers cutting their teeth, we don't, eventually when those senior developers run out, you don't have anyone taking their place other than maybe the AI. Okay, so that will be a lost art.
And maybe not one that we should lose. I mean, there's some things that, if you lose them.
I absolutely agree. We shouldn't lose it, but are we destined for the servo chairs in Wall-E, whatever the movie was?
I don't know. I'm concerned about that. I also get concerned about, and this is going to really make me sound like an old fogey out there somewhere. I get concerned about developers who then come up in sort of this newer environment and they don't have that sort of experience of way back when the environment was locked down and, things were done a certain way and with a lot of attention to, I guess, security, as maybe more than today. But I do worry about that.
But so guys, let me just say this though. We've been doing Tech Strong Gang now for, is it 18 months? Something like that. And we've been talking about AI for at least that long, at Tech Strong. And we've been having the same conversation. Is AI good at coding? Is AI going to replace my coders? Is AI,
in terms of any type of content creation, will it replace whomever, not just coders, but writers, editors,
TV, video hosts,
editors? Yes,
could be. Am I real or am I an AI? But and we've seen progress, as you say, Mike, leaps and bounds in progress. I mean, I don't even think it's every 6 months. I think it's every couple weeks. With every new release of one of these AIs, they do better. Do you still, at some point though, does that progression graph curve flatten out, right? Where we can't make further improvements without some hot new chip? I mean, is there like a Moore's law kind of thing here where it continues on that upward trajectory? Man, if I knew the answer to that, I probably wouldn't be doing this. But I think that's really the issue. Not a question of where we are today, but how fast tomorrow comes.
Yeah. And I just feel like right now, too much of this conversation is wrapped around the fear factor. And everybody's trying to kind of, and I don't know, you read stuff in the Times and they'll say, the C-level execs are trying to use AI as a boogeyman to, whip the labor force into line. Others would say, the fact of the matter is that it's the labor force that may benefit most because a lot of that toil that wears them out and kind of makes them cranky at the end of the day might get eliminated. But it's not to the
As
point
will
where
some of their jobs.
right.
Some of the jobs, well, the caveat is, but there'll be better jobs. So there will be better jobs. I don't know what they'll be, but there'll be better jobs. But here's the thing. You want to know the truth? None of that matters. None of that matters because we live in a market-driven economy, in a market-driven system. And if someone could do it better, faster, cheaper, they will. In spite of what the voters in New York City may think, right? We're not communists. We're not even socialists. If someone could do it, if I could use something to do it better, faster, cheaper, I will, and the market will reward me. That's the bottom line. So we could wring our hands and woe is me all we want, but that's the realities of the market. Fair?
I would say that it's fair. I just don't think it's going to reach a point where it does not require some sort of human supervision oversight anytime soon.
It shouldn't reach that point.
They said the same thing about driving cars. Of which, most people are not driving self-driving cars for a reason.
I just love it a reference to yesterday's show about the robo-taxis. But anyway, we shall see. We shall see.
As I look out my window, I do not see any self-driving cars going by right now.
I know, but 3-4 generations.
They're in San Francisco, Austin, and Phoenix. Yeah.
3 or 4 generations ago, Mike, your grandpa or great-grandpa looked out the window and said, I don't see any horseless carriages.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is that.
And if he did, he yelled out the window and told the guy to get a horse.
Well, that was I saw a meme on this recently, right? A guy telling a horse, don't worry, something's going to have to pull these carriages, that we weren't going to replace the horse after all.
I think the horse might like to be replaced, to be honest with you. It must get awfully tiresome pulling those carriages.
Absolutely. Anyway, all right, let's take a break. We'll come back here on Block C for the TechStrong Gang. Good conversation. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
All right, we're back talking about our final block, which is cybersecurity focused in the sense of, there are these people out there, bad folks, adversaries, and they too have access to AI. And it turns out that they've been doing a little innovative work on their side as well. Teri, you have a story talking about how the bad guys are using Grok and Mistral's mixed troll platform now, and how much of this is going to continue? Because it seems like, from my perspective, they may be doing this faster than the good guys. I think
the bad guys are always a little bit faster than the good guys. That's just my opinion. But so this all centers the conversation starts with Worm GPT. And you guys might remember, follow me back to the summer of 2023, and it had its sort of blaze of glory, Worm GPT, for about a month, right? And then one of the founders, actually, I guess, shut it down, was getting ready to get in a little bit of trouble, and that happened. And so I think when I was working on the story, I thought this is a surprise, but not a surprise, because you expect generative AI and whatever to be insinuated into just about everything these days. And also, you don't ever expect that worms and other things go away completely, right? They always seem to come back and have a new life. And Worm GPT was kind of interested because while the sort of original flavor went away, it's been sort of the basis for these worms that are AI powered through, I guess, the last couple of years. I think somebody called them. It's like the Kleenex of of worms, but. And so everybody, a lot of these things have been built on GPT as sort of the platform that ended up happening the stuff for a while. And really, the folks over at Cato Control went back and looked at the last couple of years and found out that a couple of strains had emerged that were powered by Grok or Mixtral. And that's got some interesting implications for security, for sure.
Do you have a sense of whether these strains are more lethal or less lethal than the strains that humans created, or is it just going to be there's a lot more
I think
of them?
there's a lot more of them, but I also think that maybe the real issue here is it allows attacks to scale. It's I guess the breadth and the depth of the problems that it can cause with security is just much greater. So in that sense, maybe more lethal.
Yeah. Alan, the other thing that I've seen too is it seems like the malware as of late is better at evading the defenses that we have. And I got a sneaking suspicion that may be because somebody's using AI tools to keep generating new variants of the same malware that makes it difficult to detect. But
Well, Mike, I've heard rumors that a lot of these variants were actually developed in a lab in Wuhan, and and they've escaped into the wild. But shades of mRNA. But I mean, here's the all kidding aside. Here's the fact. I had this conversation the other day with the CIO of a company called Deep Instinct. They have an AI that helps with security. Don't think for a second, for even a millisecond, that the people who propagate worms, the bad guys, the black hats, whatever you want to call them, are not as proficient or maybe even more proficient than some of the best security people we have. And so, of course, they're using AI to polish up and upgrade, up-level, upskill their work. You're seeing it across the board. Look at the phishing emails you get now compared to what you used to get. Phishing emails used to look like they were written by Boris and Natasha, or kill squirrel. But now you got to look really close. They're written really, really well.
Well, that's as you were saying in the earlier segment about AI, generated writing has gotten so much better. It's the same.
Yeah. So why wouldn't these guys be running their worms and telling the AI to create a variant? Now, this is where you get into this whole issue, though, of do you have guardrails on your AI and LLM that if someone says create a variant of this worm, it says, no, I can't do that. And then you're going to have, unlocked AIs and LLMs that are only too happy to do that for you. And you set up this whole kind of underground of against the empire, renegade AIs churning out this stuff. Or if you're a researcher, researchers might have valid reasons for asking an AI to do a variant of some code thing to, similar to fuzzing in terms of testing code and everything. So this is not an as easy thing as you would think.
Teri, it doesn't look to me like the guardrails that are in place really do much, because from what I'm reading, the bad guys figured out how to work their way around those things pretty easily.
And that's just about everybody that I talked to for this story said that, right? The guardrails work, which means you're going to have to rethink what those guardrails might be.
Yeah, they don't work today,
They don't.
but maybe we got to put more thought into making
Well,
better
maybe
guardrails.
so. And is the answer around like sort of we've talked about this before, maybe limiting AI automation? Would that, help better monitoring to try to spot the problems and then adjust your guardrails accordingly? Perhaps maybe guardrails aren't solid. Maybe they are a little bit flexible. I'm a security person saying that, I'm sorry to say, but I think that's possibly the case. And, but the guardrails clearly aren't holding up at this stage.
No. I mean, again, guardrails are sort of artificially grafted on to the AI. They're not. Maybe we need to design AIs guardrails built in from the get-go, and maybe they'll be. I don't know what the right answer
Well,
is the
That
bottom line.
probably hits
Certainly.
on it too. This is a very, this is stronger evidence that we shouldn't bolt on security any longer. I mean, and that's what's happened with AI because generative AI in particular, because of its rapid growth and
But it's happened with every technological innovation for as long as I've been in tech,
but
30
this just
plus
has
years.
potential to just
Always
explode so quickly. And I think that's so yeah, I'd like to see those guardrails built in from the get-go.
Well, here's what I think is wrong with the guardrails is the people who are building them are the same people who build the LLMs, and they're designing those LLMs to be as useful and as friendly as possible. And well, guardrails kind of go against that notion. So maybe the folks who build the guardrails should not be the same people who are building the
Yep,
LLMs.
100%. Or they need to at least work in
There is that.
concert, right?
Mhm. All right. Guys, I think that's going to wrap up our Textron gang. Mike, you're due home tomorrow. John, you're coming home tomorrow, I take it?
I'm coming home tonight or today. Yes, whatever today is. Yes.
So I will be on the gang. I will be on the gang from Denver tomorrow, but then I'm hopping on a plane
I
immediately.
feel like I need to go someplace so I can come home.
Yeah, you got to.
Why don't you go to the next Las Vegas AI show, Terry?
Oh, I might do it.
Maybe they do it at the Sphere and talk about an AI.
Yeah, go to the Sphere. Have a good time.
All right. Until next time, though, wherever you are, enjoy Textron TV immediately following our gang show today. And until then, it's Alan Schimmel. We're out.